Hello and welcome back to the second to last lesson in class, which stands for creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality. Now, the last lesson, that'll be lesson 50. That will go with the 50 stars on the flag, 50 states, etc. And then of course we're on lesson 49, so it's only a matter of time before class ends, and well, it's up to you to pick up where everything left off and to apply everything that you learned within class. Now, if you don't get to see this and you see this in the future, well, hopefully these philosophies, these ideas, these opinions motivate you to take action, do something with your life. Geo and Gia, if you're seeing this sometime in the future and Theo went to go help some people, just know that Theo was always a good person, but Grandma and Grandpa allowed bad things to happen, and then Grandma kept pushing for bad things to happen. So Theo had to leave to go help other people and get away from the environment that he was in because of all the other bad people that were there. So, love you guys, but let's get into lesson 49. Those with understanding scare those without. Now, what does this mean? Well, let's go with point number one. Does anybody actually know what the devil's job is? That's right, the devil, Lucifer, from spiritual texts, so on and so forth. Can also be used as coded language, but that might be in another video. However, in the understanding of the context of the devil and him having domain over this area, if you read it correctly, it dictates that he had domain, right? Not that he was fully in charge, but he was more so like a warden to a prison, so on and so forth, or a jail, right? So if you hear somebody say, oh, I like to play devil's advocate, so on and so forth, they're defending the devil as their attorney, so on and so forth, and the devil would be the warden that is keeping you imprisoned. So think of it from that context. And then, of course, if you were to watch Netflix Lucifer, obviously, when he goes back to do his job, he's literally a warden watching everybody carry out their torment or their punishment over and over again in hell, so on and so forth. And you could pick it up from the gist of the TV show or by reading a book. Now, point number two, could this be used to describe people? Yes, there has been people that utilize spiritual wording and vocabulary and terminology. My mother once called me a demon in front of law enforcement and so on and so forth. They also have other terms like black eyes and all these other things, because when you watch scary movies and you see like a bad person or a spiritual entity that's bad, they normally have like black eyes or something. Like, do you remember the movie Legion with the gentleman that played Chaucer in A Knight's Tale? He played Michael in there, and he was speaking to Gabriel as well as others. But when somebody got possessed, so on and so forth, their eyes turned black, right? So think of it like that, right? Now, granted, this doesn't really happen. If it does, you might want to check if they're wearing contacts. And then if you have one of these pens, you can actually turn the light on. I'm pretty sure I showed you this before. Make sure that their pupils dilate. If they don't dilate and they have black eyes, you can use the pen to do something else to get your point across, since they're trying to be Odin. So, moving to number three. Why should humans and people understand this? Well, because the terminology and the brainwashing that has occurred is ridiculous. And people's lack of understanding, due to the fact that they are lazy and sometimes they just go based off of not just hearsay, but what somebody else says without doing their own research, they're inclined to believe it because of what? Followers, because of gravitas, because they have a lot of money, social proof, social engineering, and these are terms that you can readily pick up through a dictionary or going to the library, or doing a search online, or using a large language model, if you know what that is, and asking it, what is social engineering? What is social proof? Give me examples. What is psychological disruption to create cognitive dissonance? What are psychological operations carried out by the military on not only civilians, but veterans as well, so on and so forth, right? And so think about it like that, because if people are inclined to be used as chess pieces, even though we had the No Kings parade and everything else, there's always people playing a game of chess, whether they're in the position of the king or the position of the queen, right? Even if they're married, right, or dating, and the queen goes and sleeps with a bunch of people, 9 times out of 10, she was led by the king. Unless she is playing the role of the king, then that is different. Yes or yes? Because both men and women can play chess. Think about that. Now, moving forward, how did the old gods lose their power? So let's back up. What's the devil's job? He's a warden to watch over the prisoners that are in jail or in prison, right? Can this terminology, such as devil, angel, etc., be utilized in the civilian populace? Of course. In business, you have angel investors, right? But angel investors don't necessarily always pertain to money. Sometimes it's resources, intelligence, education, so on and so forth, experience that they're able to offer to other entrepreneurs that are on the come up or in a startup mode. So they might step in as a angel investor, not charging them anything and giving them a limited amount of time or a limited investment. And if that's financial, it's still a limited amount, not in comparison to like a venture capitalist or a big time investor that you would see in Shark Tank. So think of it from that perspective. If they're using terminology like demon or devil or whatever the case may be, they may be describing a bad person, someone who has been psychologically spelled or underneath some type of hypnotic trance, so on and so forth, right? And you may say, oh, that's not possible. Go look up Darren Brown on YouTube and watch Manchurian Candidate. Go watch Trick or Treat by Darren Brown, who's a mentalist in the UK, and tell me if it's not real or possible to hypnotize somebody and get them to carry out acts. Now, when it comes to people being utilized like chess pieces, they just need to be told just enough information to carry out whatever action they need that person to carry out. So if they got to lie to a judge to get a waiver, they tell the judge just enough information to pass the waiver. If they need law enforcement to do something, they tell law enforcement just enough information for them to do whatever it is that they need them to do, because nobody's going to really ask questions unless they have to, not knowing if they're being implicated in a crime or not. But the moment that comes to fruition or comes to light, people start asking questions because they could get in trouble, right? The vaccine for COVID didn't come out magically in a year to 2 years, but it did come out, and it was a mysterious virus that they found a cure for in less than 2 years because it affected everybody. Think about that for a second. So, how did the old gods lose their power in myth and lore? Well, in myth and lore, the old gods, not the God of the Bible, but the old gods, think Greek gods, so on and so forth, they lost their power due to people stopping to believe in them. So, the moment the belief stopped, their power disappeared. It's the same thing with leadership and everything else. The moment the support stops, are they still deemed a leader? Because a title does not dictate such, right? How many of you understand the difference between a leader and a boss, right? Would you rather work for a leader or would you rather work for a boss? Remember, a boss will normally make you or force you or give off negative connotations or comments or whatever, and force you to do something, leaving you disgruntled. A leader will make you want to do something, similar to Aesop's fable, where the wind and the sun had the challenge of getting a man to take off their jacket, right? The wind blew and blew, it got cold, everything else, and as much as it tried, the person just kept holding on to everything, right? Then the sun finally chimed in, and it was its turn, and it made it warm, and because it was warm outside, the gentleman took off the jacket. Now, That's one example, so on and so forth, loosely based on that, so on and so forth. But you can understand the same concept. If people lose belief or power due to the lack of belief, they lose their position, which also means that they lose their power and ability to do harm and continuing to do harm, whether or not, so on and so forth. So, moving on to the next point, this would be point number 5. If people and humans in power were going to lose their power, what do you think they would do? Now, I mean, think about it. Study history, study humanities, everything else. Anybody whose power structure or power was threatened or was on the verge or brink of diminishing normally did something outlandish in order to try to maintain power. If they didn't have jurisdiction with something, they would make up laws or rules or find a loophole, right? Who was it? King Henry, I'm pretty sure, if you study history or if you've seen it, so on and so forth, depending on your location, because history is written by the victor. Um, Apparently, divorces were illegal, but then again, they introduced a loophole and laws later on for divorce and things like that. And he was able to be with multiple people, so on and so forth, right? I think one of those people was Anne Boleyn or something like that, right? And they made a whole TV show about it. So there's always going to be a loophole, right? And it's similar to like someone who doesn't want to pay like child support, but has a bunch of kids everywhere, so on and so forth, because they had the finances to mess around and find out and bring life into the world, but now they don't want to pay for everything that it entails. So they make up laws or whatever, or cap it at a certain point, so on and so forth, so that not only responsibility doesn't get shared, but it also doesn't affect their bank account and money, which is what, per words and ink on paper, just like a book, doesn't mean much to those people until it starts to hinder them and it starts to diminish beyond a certain point, which leaves them uncomfortable. And money is just portable power, as Tony Robbins would say. So think about that, right? If people in power were going to lose their power, what would you think they would do to individuals or others to force them to give them their power back, or whatever the case, right? And if you've seen Hunger Games, it's a similar concept, as well as the other movie, what is it, Divergent, so on and so forth. There was like a 3-part series, and then of course other things as examples, right? Remember, in Shadowhunters and Mortal Instruments, Valentine, the bad person, so on and so forth, wanted the cup, right? And his daughter had access to the cup so that he could go ahead and do what he wanted to do, but he wanted to do bad things. He even killed his son and sacrificed him after he found out that it was his daughter that possessed the ability. So he was nice to her and made sure that she stayed on his nice side and vice versa, so that it could be leveraged later. Now, moving forward, why understanding vocabulary and what someone is saying is important. So even if they were to give you an implant or hack your device or put you underneath heavy surveillance, so on and so forth, people still need to understand what is being dictated or stated. It's like a doctor coming in stating, I got to do coronary bypass, and nobody understands that vocabulary. So they keep it simple and break it down Barney style and say, I got to perform heart surgery. Now you understand what they're saying, right? And it's the same thing in the legal context. It's the same thing as anything else. And during my time in the military, I had friends that did cryptolinguistics, which would decipher different languages, especially encoded, in order for protections to be put in place. But when you're being set up or somebody's trying to make you look a certain way in the eyes of the public or in the eyes of others that have the ability and power to detain you or put you away or lock you up or whatever, they're going to be very precise on the information they release to certain individuals in order to get them to do certain things, because it's like a game of chess, not checkers. Always remember that. And if they don't understand something, well, they'll stay around long enough until they create definitions to words. This is why, in the legal context, even when you go into a courtroom or into a law class or library, they ask for definitions because sometimes words could be used like ebonics or an entendre or metaphor or an analogy for something else, right? Three is tree, but a tree is right behind me. So how is that three? You understand what I'm saying? So think about it like that, because people will always try to backtrack, and those in power that don't want to look like they messed up. For instance, a doctor giving a medical diagnosis in less than 48 hours that normally takes way longer because they need to experiment or future science, etc. And that's going to go into another video. Hopefully you guys watch it. It'll be in Finding Freedom. But they normally will go ahead and get everybody to help out, right? To make sure that their diagnosis sticks, because they don't want to look bad. They don't want to say they gave out multiple misdiagnoses. They're not going to remove the label because they're scared or they got intimidated, so on and so forth, even though they put it on in 48 hours, but they can't take it off in 72 or 96 hours, which makes no sense. And then, of course, if there are no signs or symptoms, but they still rely on that to, well, detain you temporarily because they don't like what you're saying, well, then you know something fishy is going on. And I can only hope that the powers that be also acknowledge that fact, right? Because they're just creating a patsy, so on and so forth, to cover up their fuck up. Like in the first episode of the TV show The Resident, where a surgeon messes up and kills a patient and then tries to intimidate, uses power, money, and everything else in position to get other doctors and other individuals to cover for him, until the other doctor that's in the show, who's a former Marine, decides to make enough noise and get enough people's attention to where, well, hopefully it gets rectified. And it does in the TV show, but in real life, it doesn't always work out that way. Now, let's move forward. The lost will always follow anything that sounds good without searching for truth, right? So, something that I sometimes say is lip service pays well, but helps no one but the speaker providing the service, right? So, loose lips gets tips. That's one thing. That's completely pertaining to something else. However, lip service, have you ever met or seen a sleazy salesperson that will say anything just as long as it sounds good? Right? Because if things sound good or look good or are aesthetically pleasing, you're more inclined to make a decision whether to purchase or not. And if they're able to justify not only their actions, but then manipulate your emotions, right? Based upon, well, market dynamics, social dynamics, psychology, and business understanding, about 80% of purchases are made based off of emotion, but then is justified with logic later. Similar to the diagnosis scenario, right? It was probably made out of emotion, given instruction by whomever was in power, and then justified with logic later once they had to backtrack to cover everything up or to try to make something stick, right? So think about that. Lip service pays well, right? So salespeople get paid well. Not to say all salespeople are, whatever. However, there are those few that are, well, sleazy. There are those in business that are sleazy, or in different industries that will smile and look great in front of everybody, but behind closed doors, they say something completely different. So, why is that? Because money makes the world go round, right? And if I can convince you that something like this is valuable, right, then you will pay money for it. Now we just have to justify and make sure that the price matches, right? Because price is a part of marketing. And then, of course, we have to promote it correctly. That's your copywriting, advertising, etc. But then the sales team has to handle objections and things like that. And that's where the lip service comes into place sometimes, especially if they're hungry, right? And if people want to be successful, allegedly, you have to be hungry right? Because you can't just, well, study something, get a degree, get certifications, and necessarily get a job. That doesn't exist, especially if you're on somebody's naughty list and they don't want you to do that because they feel as though you need to learn something or they got to straighten you out, etc. Right? It's like somebody saying one thing is a drug and this is another thing. The only thing separating it is taxes and vocabulary. Because if it was a pharmaceutical, it would be different. If it was medication, it would be different. But if you hear the word drug, you think of something illegal. Now, if you call it medicine, even though medicine is a drug, it has taxes that are attached to it along with other things. So the vocabulary changes, which tells your brain to alter its understanding and definitions that it's currently receiving based upon communication. And that psychological fallacy will let things slip right on by. See, because alcohol can be deemed a drug, but it's sold everywhere and it's accepted everywhere, right? Now, during the times of prohibition and bootlegging, it was illegal, but that's how NASCAR got started, go figure. But now you have other concepts that are illegal, but they're utilized on both sides of the fence. So remember that, right? Vocabulary and taxes normally dictate what's good or bad. And then the people using the terminology in a psychological fashion will determine how you interpret it. Now, why does 22 a day still exist? Well, being experienced on everything that happened in not only North and South Carolina, as well as the populace that wanted to play with this little idea, it's probably going to continue to exist because, well, I found out that there was some type of segmented operation that was going on or whatever. Sounds crazy, I know, but I have the receipts to prove it. So, I mean, think about it. If you have dual insurance, so on and so forth, and they think you're mentally strong or fit and they want to test you for some reason and drain your bank accounts and see how far they could push one's limits, well, they'll just get another person to do it. They'll get another branch, they'll get an organization, so on and so forth, to carry these actions out, and it'll get sanctioned, right? If they can't find somebody or the law doesn't dictate or permit someone of US citizenship to do something, they'll just get somebody from a different country to do something, right? And they'll make it completely legal because the other person's from another country like Germany or Europe or whatever the case may be, right? In order to carry something out, because people will not only have curiosity, but they'll share stories until people are blue in the face, and they'll also say stuff because people are crazy and are yearning to feed into negativity instead of positivity. So they're more inclined, because negativity weighs so heavy, to fall for the story and the bullshit instead of actually meeting the individual or seeing their past records and rectifying the situation. Instead, they rather continue to go down the path of power, corruption, and everything else. And I know I may sound like I'm on a high horse, but I mean, think about what's happening in the media and everything else. We didn't go just get Maduro, so on and so forth, etc. It was also to go after the oil. And if we put somebody of our liking into a position of power, they're more inclined to sign contracts to sell oil to the United States because the OPEC deal is up and money makes the world go round. So, why does 22 a day still exist? Well, for one, it's easy money. If you have insurance through the VA, so on and so forth, that's one source of income for hospitals and everything else. And if you have a regular job, meaning you have health care on the civilian side or private sector, you're now duly covered, which means they can make even more money making up bullshit in order to, well, put more money in their pockets, which is, i.e., fraud, by the way. Because miraculously, if you don't have insurance, they won't help you or assist you. So weird how that happens, right? Now, moving forward, it's an easy way to get rid of people. If psychologically you can convince somebody to carry out the acts of what 22 a day stand for, well, then it also erases and creates a clean slate because the person did the job for you. You didn't have to, kill or murder them. You just had to create a psychological operation. They'll do it to themselves, but that's still classified as a murder. which people don't understand for some reason. But they allow it to happen all the time. And they'll even include family members and everybody else and incorporate them. And then they'll say negative stuff because remember, negativity outweighs everything. And then they'll put you under heavy surveillance, monitor everything you say and do, whether you're in private or not. And then they'll still try to force something to happen to drive people to the point where they do something like that, or carry out an act where they're able to imprison them or put them before a judge whom will do so, who was just told enough information. And I've seen this play out time and time again, as well as intimidate other attorneys in the area to not take on their case so that this can go through effectively and efficiently without anybody being questioned based upon the laws of the justice system. But laws are broken every day, and if the NSA and NASA and everybody else is listening to stuff because they're constantly gathering information and data and sharing that with different companies in America around the world, right? And they're able to have a monopoly on information. Well, who's to blame? Those allowing it to happen, the ones running the companies, or what? So it's an easy way to get rid of people. 3, it's a perfect way to test on people new things, whether it be drugs, pharmaceuticals, other psychological things that they want to construct or play with in the military, right? You've heard of, well, what is it? Electromagnetic spectrum, right? And then these targeted devices, so on and so forth, that could affect people's brains, etc. You heard about the advancements of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and all this can be utilized and orchestrated with a large group of individuals that have a large budget, that have the okay from whomever approved it, so on and so forth, on the test subject. And then with the media support of spreading the idea that all veterans are, well, crazy or suffer and this, that, and the third. Look at what happened to everybody who came back from Vietnam, and then what the media and the narrative dictated about them, right? Look at other stuff, right? Look at the way they portray PTSD. They don't highlight the good stuff. They always emphasize the bad because negativity is what pays the bills for certain individuals, right? And then they feed on that and they use it as a defense because the media controls the mind, and now we have social media to control that even further. And last but not least, it's a way for abusers to get their jollies off. So if you know people that like to do psychological abuse or physical abuse, right? It's a way for them to have an out, right? A couscous, which I mentioned to someone who likes to implore and utilize psychological abuse, and then catch amnesia and dementia and pretend like it never happened, and then reach out to attorneys and lawyers to cover their ass, so on and so forth, because they have that much power or the ability to do so because they work for one of the companies in America. Right? So they'll allow it to happen because, well, remember what I stated in past videos. People only act a certain way when they think or know that they have leverage and someone is backing them up and that they can't get in trouble. The moment somebody asks correct questions, even if people say that they don't care, the moment somebody starts asking questions like, I want an actual DNA test, I want this, I want to start asking questions about this, and then all of a sudden they're like, why are you asking so many questions? I thought you didn't care. So if you don't care, why do you care if I'm asking questions? Is there a plan? Think about it. Moving forward to the next point. Why are humans and people killing each other again? Like, why are humans and people killing each other, and for what again? Right? I don't have a problem with it, but why is the question people never ask, right? They just do as they're told because they need a paycheck, right? And then you have other people that are stupid that'll continue to fuel the fire because you got to let the beef ride. And then they'll say stupid stuff like, oh, you're only doing this because you need money, right? Well, Da Vinci was not allowed to do anything else besides artwork, so on and so forth, even though he was great at engineering. And it only was during times of war that they encouraged him to come up with these engineering inventions to assist them, but they wouldn't pay him for that ever, right? The only way he could make money was through artwork. So did he need money? Kinda, sorta. And how was he able to acquire it? Through creating pieces of artwork, because they wouldn't allow him to do anything else, similar to what happens now in society, right? So let me see. We're good here? Yep. And let's do a mic check real quick. Perfect. Now, if you're getting anything out of this video, smash that like button. Don't forget to follow. And if you do see this at whatever point in time, hopefully it still makes an impact. If I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not, I'm probably somewhere else helping out wherever I could do anything, almost anything, right? So let's move forward. Leaders in the ring. So why are humans and people killing each other for again, right? So remember, I stated I don't have a problem with it, but why? And then, of course, if you ever seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, there's a scene in there where they're like, oh, let's have our best warriors duke it out so we could save the lives of others. And Achilles, when he finally gets there, he says, imagine the day that kings or leaders fight their own battles in this fashion, something like that. He goes, that'll be the day. Could you imagine if we went to war with Russia and the way we solved that was to put Donald Trump in a ring with Putin? Last I checked, based upon videos, Putin actually does martial arts and still trains to this day. I have never seen Trump do that. And I'm sure Putin would probably demolish him. No offense to the president, I'm just stating in the ring, if he was put in a octagon, just like Mark Zuckerberg wanted to go at it with Elon Musk, who do you think would win, right? Think about it, right? But that's not going to happen. They're going to use the chess pieces, so on and so forth, efficiently and effectively. And if they can't use them, they'll just discard them, just like God did in the Bible, right? The moment people became useless or served their purpose, it was on to the next one, like Jay-Z said, right? So think about that. Military doesn't ask, okay, how do I say this? Military sometimes doesn't ask questions all the time, nor listens, so on and so forth, right? They never ask questions, they never listen, etc. And they always like to push the envelope, right? So if you gave kids a lot of money and you told them to go out and test stuff on, they never know whom or what they're doing or what they're testing stuff on, and they push the boundaries and then they get caught or whatever. It's like getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar or the honey pot or the honey jar or whatever, like Winnie the Pooh, right? And then they're like, oh crap, now we got to backtrack and cover this up. And then you watch all the kids try to cover each other's butt, but because obviously, as I stated earlier, NSA and everybody else is listening and watching, do you think that information is going to get out? Do you think they're going to rectify anything? Do you think anything will actually come out of it that's positive, that they could spin in the media as a good thing, so on and so forth? And they'll say stuff like, oh, well, a corrupt organization or an investigation led to the arrests of so on and so forth, thanks to Mr. Patel and his leadership at the FBI, or so on and so forth from Homeland Security and their joint collaborative efforts in order to stop certain things from happening. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how the future plays out. Now, moving on to the next point. Can you weaponize individual beliefs? Well, of course you can, especially if they don't do their research or read, etc. Right? People will say love hurts. I say depending on, how you push it out, right? People will say, oh, it takes 9 months to make a baby, but not recognize that the universe has 9 planets, allegedly, right? And so where's Pluto? I don't know, right? And then, of course, you have other things that happen, right, that coincide with everything. So you have to see not only how things are connected, but is somebody polying on purpose because other people said it, and the rules of engagement dictate that once the door is open multiple times, it allows people to state certain things on their own because it's already been allowed in the public domain and in the open sector, or it's open source. Think about it, because it is a psychological operation that's being conducted on a grand scale, not just with adults, but with children as well, especially on social media. So, if you're able to weaponize their beliefs and ideology and ideas, you just have to, one, get them to look up to something and idolize it, right? Whether that's an influencer, individual, entity, whatever the case may be. Then from there, that individual can instruct those people to do certain things based upon psychology and what they want to achieve out of life. If they want to be like that person, if they want to aspire to act like that person or have power or control like those individuals, then they will not only emulate, but they will also carry out similar actions. Now, somewhere in the Bible or a book or whatever in history, it dictates that the sins of the parents will fall upon to the children and the cycle will repeat until chains are broken, whatever the case may be, however it's stated, right? But if they even have the parents looped in on it, and everybody else is looped in, then no chains are getting broken, and it's just a barrel of monkeys pulling everybody back down, wondering why they're still stuck in the barrel instead of being able to escape, right? Because if one monkey got out and was able to let down a rope to let everybody else out, would they be thankful? Or would they say, damn, we should have did that earlier instead of pulling everybody down? I don't know. But the people in power with control and money and all that other stuff dictate what happens. So let's see how many people are going to do something for the almighty dollar that isn't worth much. But then again, they don't respect books at all. And then the books that do get released that make too much of an impact, they get rid of or delete them or burn them, whatever the case. Wonder why the library is so important. Moving on. Can good people become bad by way of groups forcing them to do so? Well, yes. Group coercion, so on and so forth, people's need, ability, and want to have a sense of belonging, so on and so forth, and fit in and keep up with the Joneses is something that is detrimental to everyone, right? And it affects different people in different ways, right? This is why they say, you have to try multiple things. This is why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors, right? Not every flavor is for everybody, but one group is going to eventually accept another individual into their group, so on and so forth. And then, well, how does that play out? Think about it. Can biblical terms be used like an entendre? Yes. Angel, devil, demon. We already discussed this, right? Then we have servant versus slave, right? Just depends on how you look at things, right? A slave gets looked at as a negative aspect, but if you call them a servant, it's different, right? It comes off as positive, right? Then, of course, you have things like the book of Enoch, right? So on and so forth. People have mentioned this. And if you read the book of Enoch or the Ethiopian Bible, even in those books, it talks about and describes birth of humanity, like a woman actually giving birth. They don't use medical terminology, they use different terms, but it discusses it in there, which means it's been happening for hundreds and thousands of years. And people don't look at spiritual books like a continuation story or of facts and things that have already occurred that built upon each other. They look at it as one solid thing, taking the words itself as verbatim without looking for the etymology, or i.e., the definition, as I stated in the legal context, when they ask for definitions and meanings of certain jargon or words that were used by either plaintiff, defendant, prosecutor, whatever the case may be, right? The individual at question. Now, what happened during the Tower of Babel? Well, obviously you have Rosetta Stone and you have Babel applications that help you learn new languages, etc. But during that whole story of the Tower of Babel, people were trying to achieve a certain thing and speak a certain way, and then they went and they confused all the languages, right? Made it easier, right? So on and so forth. Why? Because people were trying to achieve something to create and have dominance and power to reach a certain level because they wanted to be like something, right? However, do you think that's actually going to be allowed, right? Do you think that's actually going to work, right? If you learn how to set up an allocation, right, or an allotment with your paycheck to learn how to play the financial game, don't you think they'll create more laws and other stuff to make the game harder? Do you think if you told somebody a word like couscous that they'll run off and then go tell all their friends what it means, etc., and say thank you, and then screw you over and continue to utilize you for information while they screw you over? Because, well, abuse and everything else could lead into one or two things, and this will be in another video, but it leads into either Stockholm syndrome, where people end up falling in love with the abuser. Think about it as though you owned a small pit bull named Penelope, and the person that you trusted them with kept abusing them and forcing them. Eventually, over time, that dog falls into Stockholm syndrome because that person also controls the food and shelter. So think about that. Moving forward, we are the stories we are told. That which we choose to believe in, are we not? And I'll say that again. We are the stories we are told. That which we choose to believe in, are we not? So which stories have you been told that you choose to believe in? Whether that's a spiritual context, etc., if it's a political view, so on and so forth, are you not the stories that you've been told, whether that be in the media, publications, so on and so forth, that you chose, meaning you used and utilized your free will to pick? Which would be what? A yes or no answer, right? So if somebody told you that the Democrats are the greatest and you believe that, so be it. Same thing with the Republicans or independents or the Whig Party or whatever the case, right? It's an ideology that they're able to utilize on a psychological plane, which is invisible. And unless you have a piece of paper, for some individuals, they won't believe you that you're either smart or whatever, or able to read a freaking book at a library. But they'll believe the individuals that have a medical license, like Fauci during COVID, which ended up horribly and played out horribly. And you saw what happened there, right? So think about that. And if you're getting anything out of this, smash that like button. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Now, last point here. Would you believe in Stranger Things, the TV show, paranormal activities, the devil, good, bad, aliens, if Men in Black existed, so on and so forth, if it was not told like a well-told story? So if we are the stories that we are told, well, first of all, you have to utilize a story that captures people's attention and then holds it for a certain period of time where they feel entranced, right? Or they become entranced with the words. And then, of course, that story has to not only sound good, but be aesthetically pleasing to the mind and the mind's eye, right? And so if you're able to formulate certain pictures and ideas and create scenery with words as you tell a story, which is done with movies, so on and so forth, would you believe it if the story was told poorly and it didn't capture your attention? Would you believe Men in Black with Will Smith? Would you believe in the TV show Sandman, so on and so forth? Would you believe in Ocean's 11? Would you believe in the devil, Lucifer, that's on Netflix, right? And the whole understanding there. Would you believe in the TV show Stranger Things or whatever that has other characters or whatever that they exist but you can't see, etc.? So you have to understand what's going on, what's at play, and what's in your, not only in your vernacular, but in your adjusted sight when you're utilizing certain things, right? Your perception, your perspective, etc. Is that right side up or upside down? Well, it depends. Are you an optometrist? Because if you're an optometrist, then something that looks like it's upside down that might be bad is actually good. It's just that you don't know that because the way the eye receives information, it normally is inverted, according to optometrists in science. So I wanted to wrap this up here before we get into our last lesson, which would be lesson 50. Crazy how we made it this far, but hopefully it serves a purpose. And think about it. I had this conversation the other night, and I also did some talking in my car to myself because there was a gay person and a bisexual person that I ran into. and they saw that I had the Ethiopian Bible. They also got into the topic of spiritualism and religion and all that. And I used to tell them, hey, I say I'm spiritual because people get caught up on the whole religion thing. And people like my mother and others would try to push this, but it's like, oh, well, in the Bible, it says that being gay is an abomination and all this other stuff. Now, not only did I have this conversation with ChatGPT, which I think I'll be able to share it, not sure. If not, I could take screenshots and put that in the comment section. If you'd like, go ahead, let me know. But literally when it talks about you will not sleep with another male as you do with a woman, for it will be an abomination. Your puzzle pieces don't go together, right? So how do I keep this as clean as possible? The way intercourse works with male and female, there's a different puzzle piece that the female has that the male puzzle piece can enter. If that's not there, they utilize another puzzle piece. And if that puzzle piece is dirty, because they talk about hygiene and health, so on and so forth, very much so, using different terminology, you'll get poop on yourself, which is an abomination, right? If somebody pooped on you, well, would that be deemed an abomination? As Johnny Depp and Amber Heard when she took a turd and left it on the bed. Is that an abomination? Is that a detrimental act that speaks to one's psychology? It doesn't necessarily specifically dictate that something is illegal. It's unhygienic. I'm pretty confident in that aspect, right? So when it says that it's an abomination and you will not do so the same way, it's talking about the puzzle pieces and the repercussions of putting your tool in a different puzzle piece or different box that will end up with excrement on it, right? And if you don't use protection, you will get an infection, so on and so forth. So think about that before you even say anything or try to approach me. Now, this was 14 points that I made in this lesson alone, and it was lesson 49. And 49, well, simplified, that will come out to what? That's 13, right? 4 and 9 is 13. But then you also have 14 points. That'll equal 27. 27 simplified is 9, so on and so forth. And 9 is a significant number in numerology as well as other things. But if it's inverted, it could also look like the number 6. For those of you who like to flash or force the number 69 on people with the zodiac sign of Cancer and everything else, you can figure out cures and solutions for other things, but not that. And anybody who does, you wish to punish, think about that for a second. And you will treat them like Tesla and steal their stuff, never pay them, but make sure they stick around so they could provide more ideas and innovations for you to sell so that you can profiteer, not profit and share with others. Think about it for a second. So I hope 49 has, well, opened your eyes a little bit, especially that last part, right? Because around the world, they also don't care about your sexuality, first of all. They're not sleeping with that individual. 2, it is a hygiene thing, because I also asked ChatGPT, which I will take a screenshot again and share that with you guys if you'd like. Just put it in the comments if you made it this far. When it talked about washing people's feet, because that is the first area in which that bacteria is able to enter the body and you are able to fall sick to it. So they used to wash people's feet, etc., as a sign of hygiene and cleanliness, because last time I checked, they also wore sandals, etc., and you had open area, so on and so forth. So if you are walking with sandals through a desert or whatever, the forest, 9 times out of 10, your feet are going to come in contact with other things that can cause bodily harm. So they were looking out for your hygiene, not only as a sign of respect, but as a sign of actually caring. The clue is in the title, healthcare, ladies and gentlemen. Unfuck yourselves and fix the clusterfuck that we have going on right now. Thank you. And I hope you guys catch lesson 50 when it comes out. Still working on it. Haven't even got the title down yet. But till next time, peace.